Brazil is all set to host the G20 Summit. It is a grouping of the world's leading economies, 20 of them, plus the invited countries. With me is the Brazilian ambassador to talk about the G20 Summit. So, welcome to WION. It's always a pleasure to speak to you.
My pleasure.
My first question to you is about the key focus areas when it comes to the Brazilian presidency of the G20 Summit, if you can sum up for our viewers.
Yes, our three priorities: first, fighting hunger and poverty; second, fighting climate change; third, making progress in terms of promoting the reform of global institutions of governance, multilateral governance. These are the three priorities of the Brazilian presidency.
Uh, so, specifically talking about the challenge when it comes to dealing with hunger, an alliance perhaps is being launched. If you can give details about it.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we can already speak of results achieved by the Brazilian presidency. Of course, we're still to agree on the joint statement. The presidency will end on December 1st, but in July, a task force was launched to fight hunger and poverty. Basically, this task force is a platform where you have you can find good examples of programs to alleviate hunger and poverty. You can find also offers of cooperation in order to adapt those successful programs to other countries, other developing countries. And third, you have a finance pillar in terms that, of course, if you visit the platform as a developing country and you select a program which has been implemented, let's say in India or in Brazil, and then you talk with a specialist in terms of adapting this program to your country, and then you have to look for some financing. So the platform offers these three pillars. The climate change task force is called mobilization against climate change, has two pillars. One is the reset action pillar, and the other is reset financing pillar. The reset action pillar is a locus where you can find expertise in order to devise national plans to fight climate change, structured plans, not just programs. And of course, the resetting finance pillar is the task there is to develop new financial mechanisms in order to help developing countries to fight climate change.
So, talking about India, its presidency of the G20, that was last year, and now the Brazilian presidency. It is something that has been a continuous process when it comes to the Indian presidency and the Brazilian presidency. During Indian presidency, a lot of ambitious language was also used in the joint statement. So, how has the Indian presidency helped or has been a template for the Brazilian presidency for the G20 summit?
Okay, if I focus on the negotiation of the joint statement that India so successfully negotiated last year, the fact that you could manage to reach consensus in those paragraphs which were about geopolitical scenario, of course, the hotspots, geopolitical hotspots of the world. The fact that you achieved that paved the way for Brazil to negotiate successfully in September, last September, as a result of the second foreign ministers meeting of the G20, so-called call for action for the reform of global governance institutions. The fact that you managed to pull off this agreement on geopolitical issues in your joint statement was key for us to build and to achieve also some progress in this area.
And essentially, when it comes to the Troika, which is a unique governance process in the G20, which has three developing countries today: India, Brazil, and the next incoming presidency, that is South Africa. How do you see all these developing countries being the chair of the G20 grouping, which is a leading economic grouping?
Yes, I think that continuity is a key word. I think that the Brazilian presidency, to a considerable extent, is a continuity of your G20 presidency, in the sense of giving more legitimacy to the G20. One key result in that area was the accession of the African group to the G20. Another key aspect of continuity is making sure that the interests and the priorities of the global South countries remain on the agenda of the G20, of course, alongside the priorities of the developed world. So, and the third aspect of continuity, I could go on and on, but the three main is the fact that India has demonstrated tireless disposition to build consensus. Now, I mentioned when responding to your previous question, the way India managed to reach consensus regarding these paragraphs on geopolitics.
So one of the biggest challenge when it comes to the G20 grouping, which India also faced, before that Indonesia faced, and perhaps now Brazil must be facing, and South Africa will also be, is the Russia-Ukraine war. How much it has been a worry for the Brazilian presidency in terms of forming the consensus, and has the situation become more complicated with US now agreeing to give missiles to Ukraine to strike deep into Russian territory, which obviously will be eliciting strong response from the Russian side?
Of course, the geopolitical scenario is quite complex. I think that India also faced a very complex geopolitical scenario. The scenario has evolved throughout this year. It's a very dynamic scenario on the ground. But I trust that the countries also value the fact that the G20 is a unique coordination group that brings together developing and developed countries which are now facing tensions and at different sides of the table when it comes to geopolitics. So but there is this. I think that this idea, which I think India has contributed to consolidate, that there must be a place where countries sit around the table and agree on how to discuss these burning questions.
When it comes to the joint statement, what is the current status when it comes to having the consensus? Because I'm asking this question because we all have seen the Indian presidency, and it was really a tough job burning the midnight oil and getting that very important joint statement.
Well, I cannot make such kind of forecast because this is a very complex process, and I have been also negotiating with BRICS. Better said, I negotiated BRICS joint statements in another position I held in my career throughout my career. So it's complex. It's difficult to assess what is happening behind closed doors. But at least I have read the news this morning that progress is being made. But let's not make irresponsible forecasts at this point in time. But I read that progress is being made.
So really, the fingers are crossed. My last question to you is, one of the key focus area which you talked about is the reform of multilateral groupings, which is one of the focus area for the Brazilian presidency. If you can elaborate on that.
Well, I think that this call for action, which we approved as a result of the second foreign ministers meeting, which took place, by the way, within the headquarters of the United Nations, that was the first ever. In the idea of boosting the legitimacy. And as I mentioned, we want to go on as boosting the legitimacy of the G20. So this call for action clearly consolidates the perception that there must be a reform. The reform must lead to more transparency, to more inclusiveness, to more accountability in terms of delivering UN delivering results to the whole membership.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, sir, for speaking to WION. It was lovely speaking to you, and we will be in touch with you with the post G20 assessment, because the summit begins today, and it will be something that the world will be closely watching. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, man.
With video journalist Neeraj Patel, Sidhant Sibal for WION in New Delhi.